one of my toxic traits. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday to join us for today's Learn webinar, Using Data to Grow Your Brand, sponsored by Tompkins Community Bank. It's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Maureen Ballatori, founder and CEO of 29 Design Studio. She's a graduate of Nazareth College of Rochester with a degree in graphic design and illustration and has won multiple international awards for branding and design. Her experience in brand strategy helps companies scale business growth, define their unique marketing message, and attract their ideal audiences. And we're thrilled that she has come here today to share her expertise with the Chamber. So Maureen, I'll toss it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Mary. I'm super glad to be here. I see some friendly faces throughout the room here, both from the Tompkins County community and the greater upstate New York area, which is fantastic to see. The way that I prefer to run all of these is let's pretend we're in person. If you have something that you want to ask about or contribute to the conversation, feel free to unmute and just speak up. Like if you have a question about something, clarity on something that we're running through, somebody else probably has that conversation too, or that question too. If you feel more comfortable using the chat feature, I'll also be monitoring that. And that's probably preferred because sometimes the answer to a question may make more sense to kind of insert as we're on that topic, and other times it might make sense to save till the end. So chat or unmute, both are welcome. And Mary, can someone just confirm that you guys can unmute yourselves? You do have the ability to do that, right? Mary just nodded. So great. So thank you all for being here. Very excited to go through this. I've done this topic a number of times for a number of different groups, and it's always popular. So I'm really glad to see so many people here for this event, and thanks to the Chamber for bringing me in. Like Mary said, 29 Design Studio is a creative agency for food, beverage, and agriculture brands. So that's our primary focus. But what we're going to go through today is really a very high level of how to kind of get some things in place so that you can start using data to better understand where opportunities lie for you to be able to grow your business. And goal setting too is going to be a major component of what we're talking about as well. I'm going to pull up a slide deck and I'm going to pull that up on screen so that we can go through that together. But it is also a good idea for you to download that slide deck too and print it out. Mary requested for everybody to do that in advance if they were able. I know we had some late registration, so I just shared that link if it's handy for you to print that out, or you can just go through in a notebook and kind of answer the questions as we go through. Everybody sound good? We're all friends. Everybody's gonna chime in. We're gonna have a great conversation. So let's hit it. Okay. So what we're going to cover today is this 4-step process of plan, implement, analyze, repeat. And what these 4 items are going to ladder up to are the goals that you set for your business, because you can't, and for the marketing growth of the organization as a whole, right? Because you can't plan and you can't analyze if you don't have the goals to measure them against. So that's really the first step that we're going to kind of go through in this workshop to ladder up these 4 plan, implement, analyze, and repeat areas. But first, you've got to really understand what is it. And you'd be amazed at how many companies come to talk to me and they're looking for marketing and they're looking for some support in some areas. And large organizations with multi-millions of dollars in the bank that can't succinctly and clearly explain what they do. So I want that to be the first part of today's exercise. And this is going to be a working session. This is a workshop. So I want you to, if you don't have pen and paper, if you don't have the workbook here that we're going to go through step by step, then at least with pen and paper, I want you to start working on answering these 4 questions so that you can start to understand how you talk about what your organization is or what your brand is. So these 4 areas are sort of a good way to kind of get some of those foundations set. What the product or service does for your customer. So I sell toothpaste. So what my product does for my customer is help keep their teeth clean. So it's the why behind what your product is, right? How would you describe your product or service? So those descriptive words are going to be important too in this element. How the brand makes the customer look and how the brand makes the customer feel. So everybody just take a couple minutes and go through those. So Mary, it looks like I can't see the chat when I'm sharing my screen in this way. So I'm going to have you help me with that. Great. Okay. So once you've got those captured, or at least the initial starter of that, to get kind of an understanding of what are we talking about here, then we're going to go into setting SMART goals for your business or organization. Now, SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And so one of the other kind of issues that people sort of run into when they think about setting their goals, they can be such an abstract thing, right? I want to bill $1 million this year, or I want to, create awareness for my customer. That's one that often people kind of fall back on, is like, well, I just want to create awareness. Creating awareness is not a SMART goal, right? Because it's not measurable, it's not realistic, it's not time bound, so when you're thinking through these 5 categories when you're setting your goals, so you want to make sure that it's specific enough and measurable enough that you can figure out if you're growing in that area in some way. So let's talk about, I think specific is straightforward enough. Let's talk a little bit briefly about measurable. So measurable goals use milestones and KPIs, key performance indicators, like website visits, social media engagement, length of time, and so on and so forth. Now, what you want to be careful about in this measurable area is what we call vanity metrics. So vanity metrics are, if the visits to your website are not necessarily directly related or quantifiably related to a goal that you're setting for yourself, then that's not one that you want to put as measurable. So for example, I see somebody from Caney on this. So if Caney's goal, Cannabis Association of New York, is to specifically grow membership, then one of your measurable indicators might be number of non-members we have at an event. Or it might be number of people that come to the membership page on the website. But what would be a vanity metric, one that is not directly tied to a SMART goal, would be number of visits to the website overall, right? It's a little too broad, and you can get a little bit more specific with it. Does that make sense to everybody in that, what we're sort of talking about there? I wish I could see everybody's nodding heads, but alas.
There are some nods. There are some
Great.
Lots of
Just going to
nods.
assume you guys are all loving this, and you'll have to speak up if I need to add clarity on any area here. So those are kind of the things to be aware of, right? You want to make sure that unit of measure that's connected to your goal is directly linked, and it's as closely linked as it could be, right? So that's kind of something to keep an eye on that measurable category. Achievable, agreed, and attainable. So a achievable goal would be, I want to grow my membership by 10%, or I want to double my annual revenue in the next 3 years. What's not an achievable goal is sometimes people overestimate what they can do in a 12-month period. And so a good way to keep a good check on what is achievable would be to break down a 12-month goal into, okay, if I want to double my revenue over the next 12 months, then I have to sell this much more on a month-over-month basis. And you have to really gut check, does this feel like something that is achievable? And if not, then adjust it, because goals are meant to be reached. There's something to be said for stretch goals, right? So that, you want to kind of, well, if my goal is to bill $1 million and that feels attainable, then great. But you don't want to set a bill $3 million goal if that's not really feasible to be reached, because then everyone's just going to feel like crap, yourself included, right? And we want to make sure that the reason you're going through this whole process is to make sure that you have a good plan in front of you, right? Plan, implement, analyze, repeat. So make sure that those goals are achievable. And a good way to think about it is, set something that feels achievable over 12 months, and then to gut check it, kind of break it down into monthly benchmarks, and then ask yourself, does this feel attainable? Realistic, again, sort of aligns with this achievable, right? Is it reasonable? Is it realistic? Do you have the resources that you need to be able to reach it? So if it's, that you want to, have more customers in your restaurant and triple your seatings, but you don't have the space for that, right? Then that's a resource issue. So you want to kind of think about it from that aspect too. And then time bound. You have to give yourself a deadline by which you're going to reach it. Nothing gets done like a deadline. And one of the best ways to kind of be your own worst enemy is that, well, that's something that I want to do, but I don't really know when I'm going to get there. So, challenge yourself to really think about that time benchmark for what is a goal that you can set, that is reasonable, that is achievable, that you can get to, that's specific enough that you can measure it by a certain date. Any questions on SMART goals? So here in the next page of this workbook here, you're going to go through and set your SMART goals. I'll give you a minute to do that. Feel free to go back to this later. I'm going to keep moving because we've got a lot to get through. So feel free to go back to this, but keeping in mind when you're setting those SMART goals for yourself, that they meet those SMART criteria. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is, who is it for? The other way that I kind of think about this too, in terms of your business and your goals and some of the various aspects that we're going to get into in the implementation section of this conversation, is the other question that I think about is, what is its job? So who is it for, and what is its job? So who is it for? You want to think about your primary audience first. So take a couple minutes as I'm talking through here and jot down, who is your primary customer that you work with. So for my creative agency, we work with food, beverage, and agriculture brands. And so even that, while that's more specific than we work with anyone and everyone, we have a niche subset of that. I have even more specific kind of nuggets of primary audience that we really go after. We love food and beverage manufacturers or agricultural producers, because our relationships with them, we have found, have just been, some of the best ones that we have had. So those are my primary audience. Whereas some of the additional audiences that we have might be other areas of food, beverage, and agriculture, or, even if you think about, for some people, this is primary, secondary, tertiary, and so on. Whereas other people just have like that really big primary audience, and everyone else kind of just sort of aligns in that additional audience category, but you can still break them out into these little nuggets. So take a couple minutes to jot down your primary audiences and who you primarily work with. And feel free to use the chat if you have any questions in that area. One of the other things that I'll add that's really great to think about when you're setting your audiences is if you're having trouble kind of pinning down who that is, thinking of it in geographic and demographic categories is sometimes helpful. So if you serve people in a certain area, that would be one of your areas that you can put for your primary audience. If you work with people in a certain demographic, that would be another thing to capture. So the more information that you can get in those areas, even if it's slightly speculative, right? That I find that so I have a retail boutique. I sell clothing on Main Street in the right in the comments. And most of my customers come in tend to be women. And if I had to guess, they're probably on average between the age of 30 and 55. You can make some generalizations there about what some assumptions are, and then use this plan, implement, analyze, repeat cycle to check yourself, test yourself, right? What we're setting here is with this process, we're making some assumptions, we're making some best guesses that ladder back up to our goals, that ladder back up to the company and what you were created to do, what you're trying to achieve and establish, right? And then using this plan, implement, analyze, repeat process to test some things with some educated guesses, analyze to see if they worked in the way that you thought that they were going to or didn't, right? I mean, you have to be humble in this process too, to be able to make some adjustments if something that you thought was going to be a good part of your plan didn't resonate as much as you thought it was going to. So let's move on. Another question I'm often asked that is an important part of the plan: how much should I be allocating here? If I'm going to do paid advertising, how much should I allocate? So there's really no hard and fast rule because industry guidelines are so different based on what you do for how much you should spend. So especially because, so for example, we work with a company that is a prepared foods company. So they sell prepared meals that they'll ship to your door. And so they understand that the cost of acquiring a customer is significant, but they're going to recoup that cost over time on reorders, right? So that their budget is going to be very different than someone who's trying to attract a one-time customer, or someone that's trying to attract a recurrent customer whose buying behavior is going to be on an annual basis or a biannual basis, or, is seasonal in some way. So the budget numbers are something that you kind of have to, again, make some, I feel comfortable starting here, and then, plan, implement, analyze, repeat. Once you've got some data, you can increase that amount and do more of what's working, right? But because that's the whole goal. We want to make sure that we're doing some testing in these areas so that we can lean into that more of what's working. In that area as well, part of your planning process should be research and benchmarking. And this will also give you some guidance on what should I be doing? Where should I be going? What should be part of my implementation? Because in this planning process, while we are setting goals and that sort of thing, we're also going to soon start talking about which channels should you start your implementation. So a great way to get some basic understanding or better sort of judgments on that is to do some research and benchmarking. Now, what does that mean? So we like to tell our clients, and when we work with clients, we go through this process of competitors and aspirational brands. So we like to recommend 2 and 2. So your two competitors that you're choosing are folks that you're competing directly against in your market. So they have the same demographic, customer demographic and customer geography that you're trying to achieve, right? Aspirational brands might not be somebody that you're competing against, but someone that you want to look at for inspiration in various ways. So I love Daily Harvest, is a subscription smoothie company. And I love them because they've got this fresh look and feel. They've got this kind of cheeky vibe to their tone that really makes you want to connect with them. And so in my benchmarking, might subscribe to their emails, follow them on social, take a look at all of their recent social media posts, take a look on Instagram, right? There's a channel or a button there that you can click on to see content that other people have tagged that brand in. That's another great thing to look at. But from the aspirational sense, you're looking for, how is this brand engaging with their customers that I might want to borrow some inspiration from, right? Borrow with pride, and adjust it into your own way, to take little elements of those aspirational brands and kind of put them in to your plan. The reason why it's so important to look at competitors too is because you want to make sure that you're not singing the same song as the person that you're competing against directly. You want to make sure that what you're putting out there is uniquely you. And so if you have some similarity to a competitor that is, too close, that you were going to go all in on, I've got the best purple curtains in town, who knows, and some other competitor is saying that, maybe you want to choose a different area of your business that you can tout, to say that this is my unique factor that I do better than everybody else. So that's one of the important reasons to look at competitors too. So another example of that would be if I was Windex and I'm saying I have how many glass cleaners are out there, right? So if I'm Windex, I might be, we have the best streak-free glass cleaner, and they went all in on that campaign, right? And you see all of their commercials were the birds flying into the window because the window was so clean you couldn't even see that it was there. So understanding how other competitors that are glass cleaners are talking about their products, it might be that if you are launching a glass cleaner, you don't want to say we're the most streak-free, maybe we're the most environmentally friendly. We have bottles that are, more recyclable than everybody else, something. So that's the other reason why that competitor analysis is so important, as well as that aspirational brand understanding, to get a really good idea of what footing makes the most sense for you. So some resources that we like to recommend in that category, SpyFu is great. And I'm pretty sure it's free for a couple of searches. So just make sure that you're saving those for good ones. On platform website and social media research just means go visit their website, go visit their social media channels, sign up for their emails, to see how they're communicating with their customers, both on the competitor and on the aspirational side, and take note, like literally in your notebook, like this is what I thought that they did well. And this is where I think they have areas for improvement. This is where I think they're falling short, that I might have an opportunity to grab some of those customers from them. And then what methods are they using? Like what channels are they leaning into? Are they heavy on social media? Do they do a lot of public relations? Are they doing a lot of UGC, stands for user generated content? Are they doing a lot of that? So understanding the personality of the brand and some of those areas too, and alignment for channels is a good understanding to have. And then once you've done all of this research that's sort of in these upper bullets here, you want to sort of make a note of some of the key takeaways, some of the things that you have learned from going through that competitive and aspirational brand analysis. Super important. So here you've got an area for each benchmarking area you're going to go through. And I think I gave you 3, but like I said, it's great to do 2 and 2, 2 competitors and 2 aspirational brands. And just make note, this is research. We're not going to have time for, I'm not even going to pause to have you guys go through these today, because you're going to want to put your research nerd hat on for that. But just take note what they're doing well, areas for improvement, what marketing channels, marketing methods are they currently using, and what are your key takeaways? So like maybe it's even that their website is riddled with typos or it's not mobile optimized. Your key takeaway might be, it's going to be really important for me to be mobile optimized so that I can be aligned with like an ease of use for my customer, which again is why it's so important in the earlier part of this plan that we talked about who your customer is, because you want to understand what's going to be important to them. Is ease of use important to them? Most of the time, yes, that's kind of a given, but there's going to be other areas that are going to be specifically aligned with what your customer, your primary audience cares about. Any questions on the benchmarking? Great. How's this resonating so far? Let me pause before we start getting into channels, which is like super deep. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can see all your beautiful faces. Is this resonating? Is this helpful? How everybody's feeling good? I'm seeing nodding heads. That makes me feel happy. Great. All right, next, resonates. Yay. Great. Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Everybody loves a little self-confirmation. Okay. Onward. We are looking here at, we're going to start talking implementation in these channel selections. Okay. So you can kind of think about these various categories. So that was plan that we just went through, right? So 4 steps: plan, implement, analyze, repeat. I'll say 3,000 more times before the end of today's conversation. That was the plan category. Now we're getting into implementation. So with the plan, you are going to choose which areas you want to implement your marketing that's going to ladder up and align back to your goals and who you are and what you're trying to do as a brand, right? So again, we're sort of going backwards through this whole process. That is sort of at each point explaining why you did in the beginning part of this workshop and what you'll do as homework as you kind of continue to drive this forward. Why those areas are important is because they all build on each other. Each one is foundational for the next piece. So here you want to, at this point where we start to talk about implementation, figure out which of these areas is most aligned with where your customer is. What are they paying attention to? What are they reading? What's resonating with them? Because in some areas, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, that's a vast generalization. A lot of the time, people think about social media as the free marketing channel, right? Well, I can use social media for free. That's not going to cost me anything. And, I can get my customers there. The problem with that is that it's a highly saturated category, right? When you think about social media as the general thing, to put all of these various and very, very different areas of social media into that giant consumer marketing bucket, as well as email marketing, which is a whole other thing. But social media, if that is the thing that you're going to go all in on, you want to make sure that you're doing that at the best of your ability. Because what sometimes can happen is if you choose, well, I want to be everywhere. I want to be everywhere all the time. I want everybody to see me on, on a poster, when they, drive around the block, and I want them to, I want to be on their phone with a coupon in their email inbox, and I want to show up on their social media and. Well, the fact of the matter is a lot of the folks that are in this workshop today are probably, you don't have all of the resources in the world to throw at all of this marketing, right? You've got to be intentional, strategic, and specific with the work that you're doing so that you don't burn yourself out, you don't extend unnecessary resources, and you're actually reaching the customer that you're trying to reach, right? We want you to make sure that you're effective while also being nimble. So kind of keep those things in mind and choose some of these to prioritize for your business. And we'll get into that in this next category here. This is the workshop part of it, where you're going to kind of go through each of these and prioritize them for yourself so that you can start with the most important at the top. And then if you feel like you can take another one on, then you kind of keep going down there. Now, to go through each of these, to talk about public relations, this is owned PR. This is where you are in control of the public relations information that's being put out there. So that's in the form of blog posts, search engine optimization, which would be the key terms on your website and the content on your website that's driving people from search engines to your site. Events that you do, this, right? You have all just been exposed to 29 Design Studios. So this is my owned PR. Earned PR would be other people talking about you on your behalf. So, ABC company contacts me and says, hey, I'd like to write an article about you for our publication. Great. So you can still put effort toward earned PR. That's not something that is necessarily just, well, nobody called me, so, I don't really have any control over earned PR. Absolutely not true. You can pitch yourself for opportunities. Hey, publication, like recently, I just wrote an article for FLX 420 magazine, which is a cannabis publication. And so I advertised in their publication, paid advertising. This just says social media advertising and search engine marketing because primarily this is focused on digital, but there's countless other areas of paid ads. I placed a paid advertisement in their magazine. And then the following month, they came to me and said, we would like to write an article about you for next month's magazine. Great. That's earned PR. You can also send a press release when you've got news to announce. So anything you've got something newsworthy, you should kind of think, who do I want to try and get this in front of? Let's say, so one of our clients is Fee Brothers. So they're a global bitters company based here in Rochester, and they do syrups and cordials and all sorts of other things like that. But when they have a new release for their product line, we want to send that news out to a number of publications, media publications, to try and get them to cover that information. And so we're going to write all of it out into a press release that we send with an attempt to try and get them to talk about Fee Brothers, right? Strategic relationships is also another area of that's not to be ignored, but is not typically on like the most basic of marketing plans, but not to be overlooked, because it can have such power, especially without significant resources. And it is going after who you want to meet. So in that area might be, like I said, we have a lot of joy working with food and beverage manufacturers at my creative agency. So part of my work in my plan, implement, analyze, repeat process for 29 Design Studio is just doing a ton of research of food and beverage manufacturers in my geographic region that we typically tend to work with, and then reaching out and saying like, hey, I really like what you're doing. This is what we do. If you're ever open to a conversation, let me know. Or getting yourself in the same room with them. Which conferences are your primary audiences, right? Again, making these connections back to previous parts of today's presentation. Reason why it's so important to understand your primary audience. Where are they? Are they going to certain food conferences? In my case, are they going to, if you sell a toy, are they going to a major toy conference? And that's how they decide where, the next Walmart is which toy then, they're going to bring in. From a strategic relationship standpoint, think about who you want to meet and how you can get yourself in the room with them or get in front of them, right? Even if it's like an event like this, which again, ladders up more to public relations, but it's part of the strategic relationships category. On consumer marketing, when you're thinking about social media, you should really think about, and these are just some options. I'm going to skip Twitter because of everything that's been going on lately, right? Really undetermined future, if you ask me. Don't quote me on that. I'll cut that out of the recording. But Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, really different strategy for all of those platforms, because the audience, what they're going to each of those platforms for is so different. So TikTok, for example, significant rising platform, a lot of new eyeballs there. And the way that content resonates on TikTok is highly entertaining, right? So if you're trying to put educational content on TikTok, it's not going to resonate as much because that's not what people are going there for. So when you're thinking about which social media platform is right for you and your audience and your brand, you want to think about, what is my customer going to that platform for, so that I can make sure the content that I'm putting there is aligned with that. I'm a huge LinkedIn fan. And for me, as a services-based B2B business, there's a lot of opportunity for me to just be a part of frequent ongoing conversations with my sphere of customers and people that are in my ecosystem, to be a part of those conversations on LinkedIn that costs me nothing but time, right? So, and that really kind of goes back for me to those nurturing strategic relationships and who we want to work with. I make time almost every day. This doesn't have to be every day for you. You're going to set these parameters for yourself. You're going to make your own plan. For me, it is worth the time that I invest in LinkedIn to post about what I'm doing, or new trends that are coming down the pike for people to be aware of, or emerging, things that are changing in an industry. So that comes back to thought leadership. And so if you have a services-based business, or a product-based business, right? The more you can, I'm a broken record here, but like get in front of that right audience with the right kind of content is really how you want to think about that consumer marketing, because you're getting in front of your consumer. Email is another really, really important. Like if I had to rank the importance of email over some areas, especially like something like Twitter, which is so quick, the content that's put out there is really brief. It's meant to be consumed very, very quickly, and then it's on to the next. Whereas email not only is that more long form, and you can kind of hold that customer's attention for a little bit longer, but it's also owned. So you own their email address. Whereas with any of these social media categories, you are at the mercy of the algorithm. Was my TikTok video entertaining enough for the algorithm to bump it up? And the algorithm rewards you by the more like attention that you get from people, the more it's going to show you to more people like you and kind of get that content out there more. Whereas you control from an email standpoint how often you send something to the customers that have signed up for your list. Whereas you're not just at the mercy of, well, nobody seems to be looking at my posts anymore. I think I'm shadow banned, and which is where nobody seems to be seeing your content anymore. That sort of thing. Email is all of these are important, but I think sometimes people think that email is a little bit of a dying medium, and I would challenge you all to think about that factor of how important it is from the email side that you have the ability to get right into their inbox. Jennifer is raising her hand.
Oh, thank you so much, Maureen. Yeah, this is Jennifer Karchmar. I'm a Tompkins Chamber member. Great presentation. Along the lines of the topic you're bringing up about email and then also LinkedIn, could you share some guidance you would have on using LinkedIn for the messaging versus writing a whole email? So really the question is, when is it appropriate and how is it best used to use the quick messaging via LinkedIn, where you obviously only have a short amount of space to introduce yourself and pitch what you've got, versus writing a full email with links to your work? So in other words,
great question.
Is it best to just make a little teaser like, hey, are you open to me connecting with you further? Or how deep can you get? There are a lot of people who actually don't look at their LinkedIn account, your message sits idle. So anything on that, really appreciate it, and great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the question, Jennifer. That's great. Thank you for lowering your hand. I didn't know how to do that for you. So I'm glad you asked this, because when I am referring to LinkedIn, I am talking more so about posts that you put out to go in the feed, either as your business or as your personal page. I'm not talking about LinkedIn messaging, which is what you're asking about. However, I do have a whole formula for how to send effective LinkedIn messages, because nothing annoys me more. I will die on this hill. If someone reaches out to me like via a cold outreach on LinkedIn, and I am always skeptical about accepting those, but if I accept that and then you immediately message me with spam of like a pitch of something, nothing annoys me more. Part of that is because I am a relationship building type person, that's what resonates for me. So you can use LinkedIn messaging for pitching, and anybody's welcome to pop me an email if you want my formula for how I typically go about those emails when I do send those messages. When I do send them, send me an email and I'll share that with you. When I'm talking about email marketing, I'm talking more about building a newsletter list and sending ongoing newsletter emails. And so from that sense, actually in both cases, in all of these cases, really, what you should be thinking about is, how can I add value to that primary audience with what I'm about to send them? Can I help them solve a problem? Can I help give them a news, like a new news item, that like some breaking news that just happened that I want to be sure that they know about? Hey, Jennifer, this just came down the pike. I know you work in this industry. I want to just make sure that you saw this. That's relationship building, right? But using kind of either the LinkedIn for messaging or email or your social media platforms to create value for your audience. That is a thing to jot down for everyone in this room that when you're approaching all of these various channel selections, you should be thinking about how can I add value to the people who are going to be consuming this content. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question. So then moving on to paid advertising, essentially everything that I've just talked through is primarily organic, meaning unpaid. And then you can amplify your efforts in these areas with paid advertising. And so you can do that on social media, search engine marketing. And again, I'm focusing on digital categories here for paid, but there's also opportunities for, co-branded ads that are being run in media publications or, co-events and things like that, maybe I've paid for speaking engagements, where sometimes I am paid and in other cases I pay for the opportunity to present and do an event with an organization. And the balance of that really depends on who's getting what out of it, right? And so they're just all things to kind of consider in that paid advertising category of if it's really important for you to get in front of that audience and you're sending out a press release to try and get earned media as a step one, but the step two of that is you want to kind of announce something on your own and you want to make sure it's seen by your target audience, which because you've identified their geographic and demographic traits. You can run some ads to target those people. So with this page of your workbook, you're going to go through and kind of consider these areas. Again, these are just kind of some initial, you could break some of these categories down into even, more specific categories, but start to use this list to make a prioritization of channels. And again, remember, start SMART goals. And part of this plan that you're setting for yourself is time-based. So you want to set some frequency there. And especially on the social media piece, got some recommendations there on frequency. Like if you're going to go all in on TikTok, you need to have heavy frequency and be ready to jump into that with both feet. Whereas on Facebook and Instagram and some platforms like that, you can be a little bit less on your frequency with more like a few times a week as opposed to a few times a day. Versus if you're going to go email marketing with something like a newsletter, you can do something like that more like once a month. There's a fantastic book for an excellent approach to email marketing called Do Open. It's part of the Do book series, DO. I'll put it in the chat here and you guys it's on Amazon. Fantastic book for how an email marketing strategy can completely transform your business by valuing your audience and making sure that the content that you're putting in there is going to resonate with the people that are receiving that content. All right, we've got 15 minutes and we are right on track here. I'm going to keep moving along. When we get to the analyze piece, so the other part of implementation, of course, you set this channel prioritization and then you've got to do it, right? So that's the important part. The other important part of the implementation piece too is that your plan is only as effective as your actual execution of that plan. So there are times where sometimes clients go through and set this whole, we know I just talked to somebody yesterday who said content marketing has been a major driver of business for us. And so for them, content marketing was this blog post piece, and then using that to leverage thought leadership and sort of rolling it out on some of these consumer marketing platforms as well as email. So they have known that for the last 5 or 6 years, content marketing has been a major driver of new business for them, but they started to get as priorities changed, right? Everybody's job, when you're a small, nimble, under-resourced organization, sometimes people get pulled in various areas, and that kind of went by the wayside. That if they had a plan in place and they had a plan, implement, analyze, repeat, a structure there's a reason why process and structure is implemented and emphasized in a lot of organizations, and why marketing plans are established is because once you have that and you have this structure to follow, it's more likely that you're going to get it done and that you're going to get the results from it you're going to get some results from it, right? Whether they're good or bad, you're going to get some results and you're going to learn from that. And then you can repeat this cycle again. So you have set your plan. You have established what your business is, how you talk about it, who you are. You have set SMART goals for what you're trying to achieve. You have identified your plan and who you're trying to reach and how you're going to do that. You've implemented that plan. Now let's talk about some of the tools that you can use to analyze the effectiveness, good, bad, or otherwise, for that plan that you have started to implement. So one is Google Analytics. It's totally free, very simple to put on your website generally. And the Google, like you can chat with some Google folks if you have any trouble getting that put on your site. The other thing to be aware of is Google has recently changed or is changing to GA4. So if you have not touched your analytics in a while, and you're not, GA4 doesn't sound like something that you've heard about before, you want to make sure that it's a special tracking code. It's a new tracking code from Google Analytics that you need to put on your site in order to continue tracking that Google Analytics data. So essentially, Google Analytics is like a little cookie that you put on your site, and it tracks a bunch of analytical information for you in terms of website visits, what pages are they looking at, how long are they there, what forms are they submitting, all that sort of stuff. There is a universal analytics number that has historically been the gold standard, and they have recently rolled out GA4, which is a little bit more robust in some areas. But again, they are going to stop supporting universal analytics. I think this summer is the timeline for that. And only Google Analytics 4, GA4 data will be tracked for the future. So if you're not sure, you want to check that ASAP, because you want to make sure that you have those analytics for the foreseeable future. But that's a free tool, really robust and great to track a lot of those high level metrics for your website. Yes.
You did get a question regarding effective strategies to build an email list. I don't know if that would be appropriate now, but wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's covered in that. That's probably more of a robust topic that I can cover in the last 10 minutes for today. I think that's covered in that Do Open book. And if not, essentially, it just becomes another leg of the stool that you're kind of incorporating here to make sure that the call to action, the CTA that you're putting in place, if your intention is to build that email marketing list, is that when you're putting content out there, you have thought leadership, you're sending press releases, that you're driving people to sign up for your email. I also love, like, our website. If you go to 29designstudio.com, we've got a little pop-up that comes up in the bottom right-hand corner after like 5 seconds, and it just wiggles and it says, hey, if you haven't signed up for our email list, it's really cool. So a little thing like that too is a great, simple thing that you can put on your website. We use HubSpot for that to easily add that to the site. Great question. So on platform analytics, and this is in reference to like social media and email marketing, there's a lot of ways that you can get this data. We use some third-party tools that aggregate the information from the Google Analytics, so your website, with on-platform analytics like social media and email marketing all into one place so that we can see them all on one report. But that's because we do them en masse for a lot of people all at one time. There is a ton of information on the social media platforms and in the email marketing, email service providers themselves that you can go into and see what was the result of this. And so we like 30 days as just like set yourself a monthly thing that you're going in with intention on a monthly basis to look back at your analytics. And let me come back to that in a second, because I don't want to forget to cover these tools. So Dash this is the tool that we use to aggregate those platforms together so that we can see them all on one report. $33 a month. Again, that's going to come down to what kind of resources make sense for you to allocate towards this kind of thing. You can get them with these 3 platforms. This is just aggregating them together. I mentioned SpyFu earlier. In the competitive analysis, you can also use it for yourself. So put your own website into SpyFu and see what kind of keywords. It'll tell you what sort of keywords you're ranking for, what some of your competitors are from a keyword standpoint, some of that stuff. So that's a great tool to use too for your analysis of your own website over time. And then SEM Rush is another great tool too for search terms and that sort of thing, kind of finding some optimization there. I said I was going to come back to something, and then I knew if I didn't write it down, I was going to forget what it was. So who can remind me what I said I was going to come back to? Must not have been that compelling. So I think it was the setting that sort of timeline. I like the 15th of the month. So like around the 15th of the month, and so some of that is going to depend on seasonality for you. If it's like, Wednesday is my slowest day in my business. And so the Wednesday that is nearest the 15th is my day that I'm going to set an hour aside and go through and look at analyze the last 30 days of information for the business. And so what we like to do is around the 15th, we are looking at the previous month. So we're not necessarily looking at the last rolling 30 days, but like mid-January, which is where we are now, we're looking at the entire 30 days-ish of the month of December. And then we kind of roll that forward. So you're looking at a nice succinct 30 days when you set those timelines in some of these analytics platforms. But those are some of the great tools for measuring. And then you want to track those results. So what did you learn? Not only the high level, right? So if you sort of think of this as like a start, stop, continue, or like a top three worst performing, either way, you want to make sure that you're looking at the good and the bad, because you want to make, the stuff that didn't resonate as much as you thought it did. You kind of have to like take that with a grain of salt too, because it might be, well, I think that this didn't perform as well as I thought it was going to because of some extenuating circumstance. It was a holiday. There was a national disaster. It was a Saturday, and normally like I get the most engagement like Monday through Thursday. You want to sort of take some of those extenuating circumstances into your consideration when you're doing the analytics, and not necessarily just with 1 month of data throw out these 3 worst performing activities. But the fact that you've got this worksheet and you can go through this on a monthly basis, you can track them on this form. And then when you go to look at them next month, you can look back at this and say, I think that there was something in the top performing category that also performed really well last month, or same for the worst performing, right? And then use compounding data to make some decisions about what you might want to change moving forward for your plan, implement, analyze, repeat. Last step being making sure that you're being intentional about taking that information that you're learning in the analysis and actually using it to change your plan. And again, you don't want to rely just on 1 month of data. You want to make sure that you're compounding that and taking in like a little bit of a larger kind of, data pool to make decisions there, so that you're not just, well, I did that one time and it didn't work. We had this one client that we had suggested that she do like a promotional opportunity to celebrate the 1-year opening of her business. We're like, can you give people, like if they stay 4 days, can you give them 1 day free, or stay 3 days, you give them 1 day free? Like, do the economics work for you on that? Yes. Okay, great. Is that something that you want to try? Well, I tried that. Well, tell me more about that. What does that mean? You tried that? Well, I put a post out on social media and only got 3 likes. So you really have to ask yourself too, was it effective enough in the way that I executed it, that you're not just taking I did it one time and it didn't work, but that you're really asking yourself and looking at the data. This is why the data is so important, because the data doesn't lie. That, is this enough information that I can use to make a decision to kind of move away or move toward a certain area? And some of those analytics too might be not necessarily specific content on a specific platform, but it might be more along the lines of, wow, I get so much traction on social media compared to my public relations efforts, or my public relations efforts are a little bit longer to kind of realize, but they're so much more effective in like the actual results that my business gets out of the effectiveness of PR compared to social media, which takes me a lot of time to write that content, post that content, respond to comments, and that whole thing. So that is a lot. We're on time with 3 minutes. I'll take a couple questions if anybody has them. And then, and I see one here. Yeah, somebody's saying universal analytics end of July. Thank you for that. When looking at metrics, what's the most meaningful? So again, that's going to be dependent on your business. Anybody else can feel free to pop any remaining questions into the chat here. I don't have a hard stop at one if anybody else wants to hang around and ask a couple more questions. But the metrics that are most meaningful for your business, this is an excellent question, by the way, are going to be dependent on what is your measure of success. So I always like engagement over, it's going to be engagement over impressions 99% of the time. Like we've got some organizations that as clients that their job, so their primary goal, again, this is all going back to those goals, their primary goal is more eyeballs. So for them, impressions are what matters. For most businesses, especially small businesses, the engagement is really the metric that you're looking for. And the engagement might be that they liked it, that they shared it, that they signed up for your email list, that they did something, they engaged in some way. That's usually a good one to kind of look at a high level. Thanks, Choice Words. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Jennifer. Any other last minute questions anybody has? Great. So I just had one last thing I wanted to make sure that everybody knows. I'm happy to come back and do more of these, either more of the same, more in-depth areas of this same kind of content or something else. So if you have something that is in the marketing category or brand category strategy that you would like to learn more about, let the Tompkins Chamber know. And Mary is eager to hear from all of you about what kind of information you guys are looking for. And with that, I'll say thank you and turn it back over to you, Mary.
Thanks so much, Maureen. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. I think that by the chat, it's very apparent that this is a topic that's super important and relevant and really meeting the needs of our members. And as Maureen mentioned, we want to keep providing workshops on topics that are interesting to you and actually cover things that you want to learn more about. So you can anticipate receiving an email from me in the next few days. I know everyone's over surveyed, but you can always feel free to just respond. If you have any pressing topics that you want to see the chamber offer, and we really take those seriously. And, I know that Maureen is absolutely, willing to offer more workshops. So that is something that we we'll continue to work on and provide. So, but we can't do that without your feedback. So please feel free to, even if it's just a quick email to me, I'd really appreciate it. But once again, yeah, this was a Learn webinar sponsored by Tompkins Community Bank, hosted by the Tompkins Chamber. Thanks again to Maureen at 29 Design Studio for her time and expertise. And I don't think we actually have any Learn workshops schedules at this point for the future, but obviously keep an eye on the Chambergram, and I'm sure there will be more awesome Learn workshops soon. And with that, I'll stop recording, and thank you so much, everybody. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.